On today's show, the Anaheim Ducks are up on today's Prospects Update. We'll talk about Cutter Gauthier, Beckett Sennecke, and a lot more on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related to you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Haddock Kalakash, usually joined by Sebastian High, who's sick today. But on today's show, we'll be talking about the Anaheim Ducks prospects in detail. We'll start in the first part, in the first segment with the NHL prospects. So Cutter Gauthier, Leo Carlsson, Mason McTavish, and a couple more guys in there. In the second segment there, we'll talk about the AHL prospects. So Tristan Luneau, Tyson Hinds, Rodwin Dionicio, a bunch of good defensemen. They've got some good forwards down low as well. Sam Colangelo, Yegor Sidorov, those kinds of guys. And then finally, in the final segment, we'll talk about the prospects that are outside of the structure of the Anaheim Ducks. So CHL with Beckett Sennecke, Ethan Precision, also Euro Pro in terms of, Jan Solberg and those types of guys. So we'll talk about a bunch of prospects on today's show. But before we get into any of that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get up to $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. If you're watching on YouTube, as usual, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think of the episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. So let's start with the Anaheim Ducks prospects that are in the system itself, that are in the NHL. The conversation really starts with Cutter Gauthier, who's been pretty good this year, playing his rookie season in the NHL. He's up to 12 points, 4 goals, and 8 assists in 30 games with the Ducks, and he's slowly but surely finding his footing. He's a prospect who, I initially assumed was going to take a bit more time to get up to NHL speed, and we saw that at the start of the year. It took him a while to get his first NHL goal, but once he scored his first NHL goal, feels like the floodgates kind of opened with Gauthier. He got a lot more comfortable on puck, a lot more comfortable carrying the puck up the ice himself, making plays himself. Most of his time in the NCAA, and even dating back to his NTDP year, he was mainly the passenger on this line, scoring a lot of goals, creating a lot of chances, but mainly relying on his teammates to carry the puck up the ice, to create those transition chances, then benefiting from it starting in the neutral zone. So you get the puck at the red line, drop the shoulder, drive the net, do all the things that he can do as a big body, as a power forward. But slowly but surely this year, he's gotten more and more comfortable carrying the puck up the ice himself, making those plays himself, and his teammates are benefiting. He's been playing on and off with the likes of Toronto and Strome and Killorn, even at times with Troy Terry in some shifts. So the bigger names in the team with the Anaheim Ducks, he's been mainly playing with. Also spent some time with Mason McTavish. Like he's been pretty much all over the place lineups wise, and that's normal when it comes to a rebuilding team that's struggling to win a bunch of games. You'll rarely see a lot of consistency in terms of line mates in those situations, but Cutter Gauthier is making the most of it right now. Still a phenomenal shooter, still a great playmaker, a guy who can find seams, who can create, especially on the power play. Very effective offensive creator, and he's honed in his defensive game over the years. It's still not up to NHL speed. He's in the bottom end of the lineup in terms of plus minus, but I think that's more with the usage and the ice time than it has to do with his actual abilities. I think once all is said and done, Cutter Gauthier's developed and adapted to the NHL pace. I think he's going to be one of the better two-way players on this roster. And the Ducks are well placed in terms of where they're going to end up in a few years. We're talking about Cutter Gauthier not being the only kind of young player on this roster who's developing. You also have Mason McTavish, who's been playing great hockey recently. He's also up to 12 points, but he has him in 24 games. And we all know by now what Mason McTavish can bring to the game. He's got an elite shot. Very, very smart player, reads the game incredibly well. He can chip in defensively. He can make some offensive plays, really impact the game in all 3 zones. So with him, it's not really a surprise. I mean, it's mainly what we've come to expect from McTavish. Great offensive creator, and can make some plays at a high level. So I'm really happy to see his progression. I wasn't really a believer in Mason McTavish in his draft year, but at the same time, it was a shortened COVID year. He was playing pro overseas in a lower tier league, and the viewings I got were a bit iffy. but I'm really glad that the Anaheim Ducks saw the vision with McTavish and drafted him at 3rd overall in his draft year, because since then he's proven himself to be a hot commodity in that draft class. A very, very good player, very reliable, consistent, strong, powerful player who can make high-end plays. So I'm very, very happy with the way his progression has gone, and he's a learning experience for me. Not relying too much on what the player is right now, but what they're able to do at higher levels, what they're going to be able to become is a big part of scouting. And that was one of my early kind of hurdles, which I've learned to overcome through the experience that my kind of failure to identify Mason McTavish as a high-end prospect was. But moving on to Leo Carlsson, who's also been pretty good. 11 points in 24 games, 6 goals, 5 assists. He's still progressing. He's still growing. His ice time's still fluctuating. But what's for sure with Leo Carlsson is you have a reliable playmaker. He's very good at stringing together plays, identifying seams, hitting them hard. Don't be fooled by the stat sheet, the 6 goals and 5 assists. He's still a phenomenal playmaker, and he's getting a lot of his goals in translatable ways. He's not just shooting from distance or making these low percentage plays. He's really honing in on his ability to make NHL plays. And that's really good when it comes to Carlsson, because when you look back at his draft year, at his draft plus 1 year, the year that he spent with the Anaheim Ducks, his rookie season, you're looking at his plays and you're thinking, okay, this is a very smart player. Clearly, he can identify these seams, but he's still relying on some kind of external plays, some peripheral plays in order to be effective. But now Leo Carlsson has become this really efficient, really translatable player who's able to read the game at an NHL level. And I think that has a lot to do with the way he was deployed in his rookie season. He wasn't playing 10 minutes every night. He was playing 15 to 20 minutes every night and a half, right? He was skipping a game. But when he was in the lineup, he was playing high-end minutes. And I think that's a really smart way to go about his development. And I think teams should take a good look at what the Anaheim Ducks have been able to do with Leo Carlsson and the way that he's developed given the usage that he was deployed in, and see that as a kind of template to build their development structures off of, right? You don't need to play a prospect every night, especially when they're coming from a league where they play 30 to 40 games in a season, going straight to the NHL where they have to play 82. It's not going to be easy. They're not going to be consistent every night. So getting them up to speed slowly but surely, playing them 45, 50, 55 games in their rookie year and their sophomore year, I think is a great way to kind of get them up to speed NHL-wise. There's also a bunch of other really interesting prospects in the NHL for the Ducks right now. I think the most of which is Olen Zellweger. He's been a great find so far this year. He's been phenomenal at the NHL level, a fantastic offensive defenseman who's been able to produce from the blue line fairly well. He's got 10 points this season on a team that's been kind of struggling to produce at a high level. But what's really interesting with Zellweger is just how refined his offensive game is. The way that he sees the ice is just absolutely phenomenal. He identifies secondary and tertiary passing options where he can slip a pass under a stick to a trailer. He can hit a seam cross ice. There's so many different ways that he can produce and make plays at an NHL level. And that's really kind of deployed at its best on the power play. But he's still an efficient mover. He's still an efficient defenseman as well. He's able to defend the rush. He's able to stifle plays down low. He is still an undersized-ish defenseman. That comes with its hurdles, less reach, less physical dominance, but he compensates for that with really high-end mobility, really high-end defensive stick work as well. So I'm really, really impressed with the way that Zellweger's developed so far, and he looks like a bona fide NHLer, a bona fide top four offensive defenseman is going to be impacting the Anaheim Ducks lineup for years to come. He's kind of stepped into that Jamie Drysdale hole that was left and filled it perfectly, so I'm really happy with he's progressed as well. Pavel Mintyukov in the same boat as well, as a fantastic defenseman. He's basically established at this point. Played his rookie year last year, but did not look at all like a rookie for the Anaheim Ducks. He's been decent so far this year as well. Missed some time, I believe, with some sort of injury, but he's back, 6 points in 26 games. It'll take some time to get up to speed, especially with a team like this that doesn't really produce that many points nightly. It's going to be interesting to see him kind of develop, but he's very, very reliable, very, very solid. I love him as a prospect. He was in my top 10 by far in his draft year, and he's proven me right every step of the way. He's been phenomenal. Last player I want to highlight is Lukas Dostal. He's 24, yes, but he's a goalie, still technically a prospect at that age. absolutely phenomenal this year. He's been one of the best goalies in the NHL this year. 920 save percentage on this team is not easy, and he's been doing it wonderfully. I've watched him a couple times, just come away so impressed with his reflexes, his mobility in the crease, his technique, his composure. There's so many things to work with there with Dostal. And he's looking like a bona fide NHL starting goaltender. He's basically taken the reins from John Gibson and just run with it. Very, very happy with his progression there. And, obviously goalies are voodoo, but you look at his progression going from the Czech Pro League to Liga to the AHL to the NHL, just dominating every step of the way. And you wonder how he fell to the third round in his draft year. But again, goalies are voodoo. There's no way to predict. But that's our first segment done. We'll get into our second segment here where we talk about the AHL prospects. So the defensemen, the plethora of defensemen the Ducks have in their system, along with some forwards there. But before we get into any of that, a quick word from our sponsors at PrizePicks and SelectQuote.
Today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. If you love sports, you're going to love PrizePicks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any other of your favorite sports, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in on the action. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, PrizePicks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. This week on PrizePicks, I am eyeing the hockey board, looking at Jack Hughes for more than 4 shots on goal and Artemi Panarin for more than 1 assist. It's so simple to make my picks and have fun with friends while potentially cashing out fast. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. PrizePicks, run your game.
Whether it's the World Series, the Super Bowl, or the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing. It's teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to get your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience helping 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, but with SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents, they work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Skip the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Just go to selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. That's selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. All right, so moving on to the AHL guys in the Anaheim Ducks system. We'll first talk about the 4 major-ish names in terms of defensemen that they have playing in the AHL right now. First and foremost, Tristan Luneau, who's already played NHL minutes this season and last year, but has mainly been playing with the San Diego Gulls down in the AHL. His production hasn't been all that good, 7 points in 16 games so far this year, but missed some major time last year with an injury. Had to come back this year and kind of get up to speed. So I'm expecting that to keep kind of creeping up in terms of production as he kind of readapts to playing pro hockey for a major span of time. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Tristan Luneau in the NHL with the Anaheim Ducks fairly soon. I think it's just basically a conditioning stint that's been extended mainly because he doesn't have to be sent down for conditioning. He's waiver exempt based on his contract. But yeah, Tristan Luneau is really, really good. I've liked him pretty much since day one. I had some spans in his draft year where I was a bit more doubtful about his protection, but overall he's reliable, he's smart, he makes great breakout passes, he's really good at controlling plays. That's really what he does. So with Luneau being able to get him back up to NHL speed, and then pushing him gradually up the lineup is a good idea. I think that the Ducks are doing the right thing here by letting him marinate him in the AHL, get back up to speed before pulling him up. And yeah, I'm a big fan of his game. Right shot defenseman, very, very smart, good defensively, good offensively, brings a bit of both at both ends of the ice. So I don't think he's going to be with the Gulls for long. Moving on to Rodwin Dionicio, who has 6 points in 13 games so far on the season, but has been a healthy scratch in his last 9 games. Apparently, from what I've heard, is attitude issues. I think he got in a fight on the bench after having a pretty bad shift in his last game before the span of healthy scratches. Listen, attitude's one thing, but getting on a fight in the bench, that doesn't look good for Dionicio. But if you look at the skill set, I mean, he's massive. Skating's a bit clunky, but it's still able to move around and make plays. Great defensively, aggressive defenseman, offensively gifted. I mean, we saw that last year with the Saginaw Spirit after he got traded there. Just he's able to take control of a game and just dominate from one end of the ice to the other. Very comfortable on puck, very comfortable off puck in terms of where to be, how to defend. And yeah, just reeling in that aggression is going to be kind of the next thing with Dionicio, just getting used to to kind of playing poker on the ice, knowing when to go all in, knowing when to fold, kind of showing a bit more composure, a bit more selectiveness with when he pinches, when he activates offensively. I think is going to be the next step. But obviously, he needs to play to do that. And if you're being scratched for 9 games straight in the AHL, well, obviously you're not playing, which isn't good for your development. So I'm hoping this kind of gets resolved with Dionicio fairly soon because he definitely has a skill to become an NHLer. It's just a matter of reeling in that passion a tiny bit. Moving on to Tyson Hinds has been pretty phenomenal in the AHL. He's not producing. He's got 4 points in 20-ish games, but that's not what Tyson Hinds does. Tyson Hinds defends the rush, boxes out hard at the net front, plays in-zone defense really well and breaks out pucks in simple but effective ways. That's been pretty much what he's been so far with the San Diego Gulls so far this year. Let me just pull up the actual stat sheet. Yeah, 4 points, 24 games, got 12 penalty minutes. This is a simplistic but very effective defensive defenseman. The Ducks are very, very good at picking out of the queue. They do it time and time again. They're exploiting the market inefficiency when it comes to drafting. A lot of teams seem a bit more hesitant to draft out of the queue, especially in the last couple of years. I think that might change this year, but overall, Tyson Hinds has been effective. He was phenomenal in the queue, and he's slowly but surely getting used to the AHL game. And I'm sure the points will come eventually. It's just don't be surprised if they don't, because that's just not Tyson Hinds' game. He's an effective shutdown defenseman, and he's been exactly that so far. Speaking of which, QMJHL shutdown defenseman, my brain instantly goes to Noah Warren, who's also an Anaheim Ducks prospect. He's got 1 point in 23 games, which tracks. Not a big producer. He's still fairly raw, but he's big, he's mobile, he's able to defend the rush, he's aggressive, he's great positionally as well in his own zone. Identifies threats really well when it comes to kind of switching in coverage in the defensive zone, when it comes to in-zone structural box defending. Very, very effective player. Listen, he's got a point in 23 games. I can't give him too many flowers, but I still expect that Noah Warren will take a bit more time to get up to NHL level production. And production in the AHL has a lot to do with usage. And when it comes to Warren and Hinds, I think both of them are in a boat where they're starting a lot in the defensive zone, playing number 4, number 5 minutes among defensemen in this group. Don't expect them to produce all that much this year, but I think both of them have a shot at being an outside shot, maybe, but a decent shot at being bona fide NHL defenseman. I'm not talking number 6, 7 defenseman. I'm talking number 4, 5 defenseman in the NHL. They have the defensive skill set for it, for sure. And again, the Ducks love these guys and are really good at picking them. So I think there's a chance with both of them. Now, where it gets a bit more disappointing is on the forward side. I mean, we can start with Nathan Gaucher, who's been really disappointing so far this year. He's got 5 points in 25 games, hasn't been producing all that much, and hasn't been effective really so far with the San Diego Gulls. He's still an NHL prospect, was drafted in the first round like 2 years ago, but the sum's up there. I think that there needs to be some sort of progression in his ability to produce, especially at this level. And if he can't produce at this level, I have a hard time envisioning him being able to produce at higher levels. So far, he's been one of the rare misses of the Anaheim Ducks when it comes to drafting out of the queue. Still a great goal scorer. He's got a big body. He's able to push through defenders. He's able to get around their sticks off the rush and kind of get shots off in motion, which is basically what his kind of MO has been for the past couple of years. But outside of that, I don't really think his in-zone offensive sense is that good. He really needs to work on that. I think that's kind of the main development objective for him, is just getting more versatile offensively, creating in more ways. Still a good forward, still a good prospect. I think that with the body, with the shot, he's able to get something done. He just reminds me a lot of a Nolan Foote, who played in the New Jersey Devils system. still hasn't really established himself as a bona fide NHLer. So that gives me a bit of worry, but we'll see how it goes with Nathan Gaucher. There's a couple other prospects I want to mention here in the AHL. Sam Colangelo is at a point per game. He had an NHL stint, earned that as a result of his production in the AHL. His development's been interesting. He's still a very versatile offensive player. He's able to pass, he's able to shoot, he's able to dangle. He's got all that in his skill set. Decent speed, decent overwhelming offensive sense as well. But in the NHL, it's not really kind of gelling that well. I think it has more to do with chemistry than anything. So I'd give him a bit of time. But Sam Colangelo is the name to keep an eye on. He's been great this year in the AHL. Yegor Sidorov is also in that boat. In the AHL, he's a phenomenal shooter, and I think that's going to stay the cornerstone of his game no matter where he plays. Scored 50 goals last year in the WHL. So far this year, producing decently, but not overwhelmingly. I mean, he's got, 17 points in 24 games, 8 goals, 9 assists. He can do better than that. I know that for a fact. I think he's going to score a decent amount of goals in the AHL before he moves on to the NHL. I don't think he's a guy that's going to get called up right away. But I mean, with Sidorov, it's just, you need more than a release to be effective in the NHL. I can't name you many players who are great shooters and average everywhere else to play in the NHL, but he's a fairly interesting prospect to keep an eye on. Lastly, Sasha Pastujov. He's a prospect I was a big fan of in his draft year. I was glad to see that the Anaheim Ducks have picked him up. He's got 4 goals in 11 games so far this year in the AHL, but played a decent stint in the ECHL before getting called up. He's still getting used to the AHL pace, but I think it's just a matter of time before he gets up to speed on that side. And that's our second segment done. We'll get into our second segment here, where we talk about the guys that are outside of the NHL and the AHL. Beckett Sennecke, Stian Solberg, Ethan Precision. A lot of names coming up. Just hold on. Before we get into that, a quick word from our sponsors at FanDuel.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. Whether you want to take those swings on the NFL and American football, or perhaps you prefer European football with the Champions League going at full throttle at this point, or maybe you prefer tennis or golf, whatever it may be, FanDuel has a sport for every single kind of sports fan, and that includes hockey, so this podcast is not being forgotten anywhere. That's FanDuel.com if you join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Alrighty, so let's close things off here with our final segment. We'll be talking about the guys that are outside of the NHL and AHL rosters for the Anaheim Ducks, the other prospects they have in the system. First and foremost, the conversation starts with Beckett Sennecke. He has been absolutely phenomenal so far this year in Oshawa in the OHL. 46 points so far on the season. He's been absolutely great to watch. Got a late call-up after an injury to Team Canada's World Juniors roster, and then was cut like 2 days later. But regardless, I think that Beckett Sennecke is one of the best prospects in the OHL. Absolutely phenomenal dangler. He's still one of the best pure skill players in the OHL. And there's a reason he was picked at 3rd overall. I think it had a lot to do with needs when it comes to the Anaheim Ducks system. They needed a right shot forward, and Beckett Sennecke was the best one available, even at 3rd overall. And he was an easy pick at that point, but so far he's progressed really, really well. Still a phenomenal dangler, but he's added a lot more shooter's mindset to his game. He's been a lot more comfortable releasing the puck, whether it's on the power play at 4-on-4, 5-on-5, a penalty kill, you name it. He's shooting in every scenario, but he's not doing it at the expense of playmaking opportunities. He's not ignoring his teammates and just shooting from everywhere. He's really gotten extremely good at knowing when to shoot, when to pass. I think that's a very important skill set to have as you climb the ranks and try to become a pro. Being able to understand, here's where I need to pass, here's where I need to shoot, and still being able to show a bit more of a shooter's mindset in the sense that you have an opportunity where you could delegate, but a shot is also a good chance. It's not something that you're doing despite structures or despite what's in front of you. It's just both opportunities are there. You choose the shot. And that's exactly what Sennecke has been doing so far this year. I've been so impressed with him this season. just like I was in the second half of the season last year. The main change over the offseason, since the second half of his draft year has mainly been that, my goodness, this kid loves to shoot, and he does it really, really well. His shot's mechanically a bit weird. He uses a lot more kind of forward motion and a lot more kind of torque on a shot rather than using kind of downforce and mechanical compactness to release a shot. But regardless, he can shoot the living daylights out of the puck, and he does it really well. So mechanics don't really matter all that much when you're that hard of a shooter. Moving on to Ethan Precision, who's been fairly good as well this season in the OHL. He's got 32 points. Honestly, not many notes on Ethan Precision. I haven't watched him a ton this year, but the production stands out for sure, and he's been a very interesting prospect heading into last year. I like the pick here for Anaheim, but we have to talk about Olen Zellweger, the 20th overall pick in the 2024 NHL draft of the Anaheim Ducks. A great pickup, by far the most violent prospect in the 2024 NHL draft. He had some competition, like Carter Yakimchuk's up there, but Olen Zellweger is just an absolute monster physically. Loves to throw the body, so comfortable in physical scenarios, is able to fend off forwards and forecheckers incredibly comfortably with his body. 6'2", 205-pound left shot defenseman. Great skater. And so far this year, he's been playing full-time in the SHL, Swedish Hockey League, which in my opinion is a top 3 pro league in the world. He's got 5 points in 20 games with Färjestad as a loan to their system there. He was signed by the Anaheim Ducks heading out of his draft year, which had let them control a bit more where he goes. So they loaned him out to Färjestad. And so far this year, decent minutes, about 10 to 15 minutes so far this year. He's been playing kind of third line minutes in an SHL role, which is to be expected in a draft plus 1 season. But yeah, he's a phenomenal physical player, loves to throw the body, and is very, very, very effective defensively, and has the mobility as well for his size to be able to reach certain defensive plays that other players his size can't. So very interesting prospect. I think he's a bona fide NHL or top 4 defenseman. He's got that in his toolkit. He's going to be a phenomenal watch for years to come for the Anaheim Ducks. Lastly, I do want to talk about a couple more prospects that are less talked about in prospect circles, but I mean, Terrence Smith was a prospect I hitched my wagon on early. I was a big fan of his game. Was pushing for him back when I was at Dauber Prospects last year. I was pushing for him as high as the early second round. Like I had him in my 35 to 40-ish range in the 2024 NHL draft class, even heading into the last days of the draft. And so far this year, he has been absolutely phenomenal with the Everett Silvertips. He's been one of the best defensemen in the entire WHL. So phenomenal for them in that system. Still a great offensive mind, very, very creative. I think those are the main things that stand out when you watch Terrence Smith. He's very daring and willing to try different things and explore and experiment. And the experimentation he showed this year is really paying off this year. The way he experimented with his game last year was through dekes, dangles, low percentage passes, but, that could benefit, right? He's not throwing pucks cross ice, willy-nilly. He was really kind of trying to layer his passes through lanes, slip him under sticks. There were some really interesting details on that side. And for me so far, Terrence Smith, I mean, he's been proving me right, but it's obviously very early to tell. I don't want to take a victory lap right away with Terrence Smith. But the defensive game has come some ways. He's gone a bit more physical, a bit more aggressive defensively, which has been kind of very, very fun to watch because those were kind of the main setbacks in this draft year. I also think the skating's improved slightly with Terrence Smith. He's gotten a bit more mobile, a bit more able to kind of accelerate from a standstill, go from backwards mobility to lateral mobility fairly comfortably. So very interesting prospect to keep an eye on. Also want to talk about Carey Terrance, who's a great prospect out of the OHL. Ducks have something decent here. I really like the aggressiveness with which Carey Terrance plays. Very kind of in-your-face forechecker, tries hard, pushes the pace really well on the forecheck. And so far this year, he's slowed down a tiny bit in terms of production, but he's still got 10 points in his last 10 games. He's up to 26 points in 29 games with the Erie Otters. He's a captain of the team as well. And it's mainly because of that aggression, that ability to ramp up the passion with his team. He drives hard into the paint, digs pucks off the wall on the forecheck and just gets them to the middle. Very, very smart player as well in transition. There's a lot to work with here with Carey Terrance. He's got 14 goals on the season as well, so a decent goal scorer. He's kind of improving that side of his game. I'm a fan. I like his game. Couple more guys to highlight in this pool here. First and foremost, Maxime Massé, who's been very interesting in the QMJHL. He plays for the Chicoutimi Saguenay, and he's a bit of an island in terms of that roster. They really rely on him in terms of being able to produce, being able to dig them out of trouble. The Chicoutimi Saguenay haven't been the best team so far this year. And Massé has been mainly relied on to kind of rally the troops, get some points up on the board, get them back in games, and try to kind of rally comebacks very, very often in the games that they play. I still like the goal scoring ability. I like the creativity. The offensive mind is definitely there. He's able to time his routes to the net, tip pucks, get on rebounds, all that good stuff. The mobility is a tiny bit limiting, but he's still able to create off the rush in certain scenarios. But right now, in the current making of his team's roster, it's really hard to give him any kind of development objectives or see where exactly he's been progressing so far. There hasn't been much room for growth when you have to dominate so frequently on your team and be the guy that everyone relies on to do something, because the rest of this team just hasn't been really producing that much. Still, he's got 14 points on the season, missed some time with an injury. He'll be back in force fairly soon, and once he gets back up to the pace that he's able to play at and the energy he's able to bring, once he's comfortable on his feet again, he'll be fine. He'll be fine and will be able to produce. Lastly, the last prospect I want to talk about is Lucas Pettersson, who is a prospect that both Sebastian and I were big fans of in his draft year. Played decently over in Sweden and was drafted by the Anaheim Ducks late-ish. But so far this season, he's got 1 point in the SHL, 8 points in the Swedish J20, and 2 points in the Hockey Allsvenskan. So he's been playing a bit all over in terms of rosters. And which levels he's been playing at, but he's a very interesting prospect. I mean, you're talking about a 5'11", speedy forward, plays center, plays wing, but mainly I've seen him at center so far this year. The way that he kind of creates space for himself in transition, the way he's able to kind of open up these gaps between him and carriers, him and defensemen, and kind of exploit them, is very, very interesting. So I like the way that he approaches the game on both sides of the ice, very defensively responsible, which is why he's played 19 games in the SHL so far this year. But he's playing mainly kind of third, fourth line minutes in the SHL. Meanwhile, in the Allsvenskan, played 20 minutes recently, and in the J20, he's one of the top forwards on his team. So, in terms of what he's able to bring to the game, very, very versatile, but mainly it's speed, defensive ability, and some playmaking creativity as well. I'd keep an eye out on Lucas Pettersson. He's a great prospect and will likely be a high-end bottom six piece in the NHL. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as Anaheim's third-line center once they get up to contention level and these prospects keep developing. I'm talking 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now. When the Ducks are back up to speed and other guys have developed, I think Lucas Pettersson fits so well with what they need in the bottom six. It's going to be a great option for them in that position. But that's all for this episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rating and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For a second listen of the day, remember to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And remember to check in with our next episodes as we finalize our prospect coverage for the month of December. This has been Hadi Kalakesh. Thank you very much for tuning in and happy holidays. We hope to see you next time.